Denville String Band. Denville String Band was first formed in 1951, according to my shirt, by a bunch of folks that were interested in the mummer style of playing. Many of them had moved up from the Philly area, and they came here to the lovely town of Denville, and they brought with them the lovely sounds of and antics of the mummers. Anyone out there familiar with what the mummers are? Anyone not familiar? Well, the mummers were a very old tradition from Europe that came over to the States, and during the holiday they would go and they would not bang on people's doors and put on plays and play music for food and drink. Now, I just go and drink. But then again, that's how it was. And I'll tell you, as a kid, we look back and we think about how things have changed. And when I was a kid, we always had trouble. We didn't have a lot of money. We always had car troubles. And back then, my dad, and every Sunday, we would go out and my dad would take us for a push. And you said it wasn't any good.
A push.
But I tell you, I do have one very fond memory. As kids, you remember going to the county fairs that used to come around? Well, we used to go to the county fair, and one time we went to the freak show, and they let me in for free. And with that, in the good old summertime, this next tune that we're going to do reminds me of the very lazy days we used to have, and some people I know are lazier than others. And I will say that, as much as I love my parents, they were very, very lazy people, very lazy. In fact, they had gotten divorced when I was a very young child, and as lazy. I'm trying to get over the trauma, guys. So before I was rudely interrupted, and I'm pouring my heart out to you folks, they're so lazy that during the child custody battle for me, neither of them showed up. But again, it was during the summer in the lazy, crazy days. fire for. Some want it sooner than others. I told my doctor I swallowed an entire bottle of sleeping pills. He told me to have a few drinks and get some rest. So remember, there is no beer in heaven. In heaven there is no beer. That's why we drink it here. And when we're gone from here, our friends will be drinking all our beer. This next tune is going to feature our accordionist, Russ, this big squeeze. Woo! Oh, you like accordion music, huh? You know, Russ very rarely, but he does get side jobs. And one evening he was out driving and there was a late gig, so he stopped to go get a cup of coffee. He parks his car, he comes back only to find that the windows have been broken on his car. Oh, it was terrible because he was afraid that somebody went and stole his accordion. Problem is, someone threw an extra accordion in there and a banjo. Well, our next song has a lot to do with lawn care and grass clippings, all the fun stuff of summer. I don't know if you have this problem, but I have a lot of clover in my yard. And it's a big big problem. It's almost like a weed. But you know, every now and then you might find a four-leaf clover. And do you know why you should never press a four-leaf clover? You don't want to press your luck. I tell you, it's a tough crowd, tough crowd. All right, with that, four-leaf clover. Well, back in 2010, when the New Orleans Saints were in the Super Bowl, a man notices that there's an empty seat. Can you imagine that? An empty seat at the Super Bowl game. And he looks at the guy sitting there, and he looks over and says, "Why is there an empty seat?" He says, "Oh, well, unfortunately, that was my wife's seat. She passed away." And so he says, "Well, that's really a shame, but obviously there must have been some friends that you could have shared that seat with." You know, and he said, "Well, not really. The family's all at her funeral." And with that, the Saints come marching in. My wife. My wife is the sunshine of my life. Except when she drives. There's always trouble. Always trouble. Always this or that. One the other day she took the car out, and when she came home she said, "There's water in the carburetor." I said, "Water in the car? Where's the car?" It's in Lake Mohawk. But she is the sunshine of my life, and you are my sunshine. Speaking of wives, never ends. Speaking of wives, I said to my wife the other day, I said, how do you rate me on a scale of 1 to 10 as being a lover? And she said, you know, I'm no good in fractions. But I love her anyway, all 5'2" of her. That's our next song. Eyes of blue, what those 5 feet could do. Has anybody seen my gal? Turn up nose, turn down hose, flapper, yes sir, one of those. Has anybody seen my gal? Now if you run into a 5'2", all covered in fur, diamond rings, all those things, I bet your life is in her, yeah. Could you love, could she cook? Oh, baby, could she cook? Has anybody seen my gal? Speaking of 5'2", have I got a goody story for you? I tell you. The other night, I got a phone call from a gal on the phone. She said, why don't you come on over? There's nobody home. Nobody home. So I went over. There was nobody home. But nonetheless, it was goody for me, and I hope it's goody for you. Well, I asked the director of a psychiatric hospital, how do you determine someone should be brought in for a room? And he says, well, we have a very simple test. What we do is we put them in a room with a bathtub, and we fill the bathtub up with water, and we give them a bucket and a spoon. I said, oh, so if they try to empty the tub with the spoon, or if they use the bucket, then he says, no. He says, absolutely not. That's not how it's done. If you pull the plug, you're okay. And by the way, we have a room for you with a very nice view. And with that, I'll be looking out my back door. Just got home from Illinois, locked the front door, oh boy. Got to sit down, take a rest on the porch. Imagination sets in, pretty soon I'm singing. Do-do-do-do out my back door. Giant doing cartwheels, a statue in high heels. Look at all the happy creatures dancing on the lawn. Dinosaur Victrola, listening to Buck Owens. Do-do-do-do out my back door. And Marines and elephants all playing in the band. Won't you take a ride on the guy who do-do-do-do? All American Christian, provided by magicians. Do-do-do-do out my back door. Are you enjoying yourselves, folks? My friends in the band are complaining about my jokes. You know, well, you know, I could have stayed home with my wife and heard the same complaints. I can't even see. That's high hopes. My father had high hopes for me, I'll tell you. No one's talking to you. My father had very high hopes for me. He used to say, son, whenever a door would close, another would open. He was a great philosopher, but he was a terrible carpenter. And with that, we're going to do a little high hopes. If you know the words, sing along. Once there was a silly old ant, thought he could move a rubber tree plant. Everyone said that ant can't move a rubber tree plant, but he had high apple pie in the sky. Oh, anytime you're feeling low, instead of letting go, just remember that ant. Whoops, there goes another rubber tree plant. Once there was a silly old ram, thought he'd punch a hole in a dam. Everyone told that ram, scram, he kept butting that dam, but he had He had high apple pie in the sky hopes. Anytime you're feeling low, instead of letting go, just remember that ram. Whoops, there goes another kilowatt dam. Well, do we have people out there that remember the 70s? Do we have people out there that barely remember the 70s? Do we have people who are in the 70s and don't remember that decade at all?
People who are 70.
Hey! Well, I can tell you this. Back in the 70s, if a cop, a cowboy, and a construction worker walked into a bar, what would the bartender say to them? The YMCA is right down the street. And with that is our next song, the YMCA. It is a participation song. We need you up front to show the people, please.
Just the crowd how to do it. Come on, come on.
say this. I feel on top of the world. I really do. It was a lovely summer this year. I mean, you think about it, we had great weather and the like. I got to see my doctors. That's what always makes me feel great. And trying to figure out, trying to do 3 things at once. But when I went to go see my doctor, and I said to the doctor, and he goes, you know, how are you feeling? I said, well, Doc, I wake up every morning and I look in the mirror and I feel sick to my stomach. What's wrong? He says, well, I don't know what's wrong with you, but your eyesight's perfect.
Oh, I get it.
And with that, on top of the world. It's a crazy world out there. I think we can all agree with that. Things are different. I came home early from work the other day, and as I'm driving toward my house, I see this guy, what appears to be escaping down the street, only in his underwear, just running down the street. So I rolled my window down, and I said, "Hey, what are you running from?" He says, "You're coming home early." Oh, and with that, I thought of the Great Escape March. This is a clap along, so when we start clapping, please clap along. It keeps you from throwing fists at me, so thank you very much. Class reunions. Well, really not class reunions, unless you consider going down to jail on Visitor's Day. I usually go down there to visit relatives, volunteer my time. But it turns out that this lady goes into the pharmacy. She says, "I want to see the head pharmacist." So he comes out, she says, "I need some poison. I'm going to kill my husband." I said, "Oh, lady, you can't. I'm going to have to report you to the police. You say you have to leave right." At that point, she takes her phone out and shows some very, very bad texts between his wife and her husband. And he read them and says, "Oh, I didn't know you had a prescription." And with that, they both went to Folsom Prison, which is our next song. train a-comin', it's rolling around the bend. I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when, but I'm stuck in Folsom Prison. Time keeps dragging on. When I hear that lonesome whistle, I hang my head. When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, never be a bad boy, don't you ever play with guns. Well, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. And when I hear that lonesome whistle, I hang my head and cry. This next song is coming from one of my most favorite movies and or play, but it also kind of hinges on my love life. I found the greatest way to pick up girls. I hang out at the women's prison and wait for the parolees. I wait at the women's prison waiting for parolees. This thing on. There must be people out there, I hear them breathing. And with that, Prisoners of Love. Doctors. Been talking a lot about doctors. But I'll tell you, I've gone to my doctor. I'm supposed to confess these things. I have an addiction to Tipperary. But there's still a long, long way to go. Tipperary, long, long way. Okay. You got it? You got it? It's over soon, folks. Don't worry. And with that, it's a long, long way to Tipperary. As you noticed, we've had a lot of summertime themes during our concert. We had some drinking themes, of which, when I leave here, I will go home and drink. But forget about the day. But traveling. Did anyone travel this year for summer vacation? Did you travel far? Morristown, yes. Yes, that's very far for some people. Yeah. But did you travel by air? You traveled by air. You went through the whole nightmare? Took off your shoes, took off your belt, took off your pants. Wait a minute, you're in the wrong place. But nonetheless, traveling has always been a problem. So is that. Traveling's always been a problem. You never know how much to pack, where and when. In fact, the day that my ship came in, I was at the airport. Story of my life. But with that, it's pack up your troubles in your old kid bag. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, 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 while you let Lucifer ride your fang. Oh boy, that's the style. So what's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your trouble in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. this country will be celebrating its 250th anniversary. We're a young nation, a very young nation in comparison to Europe, the countries of old. However, this country has shown a light to the rest of the free world what a free world can be. And with that, not only is it the support of its citizens, but also of its citizen soldiers, of which there are many, there have been many, and I pray there will be many more in the future. So we are going to perform our military medley, and if you served in any of the branches that we play the themes or anthem or hymn, please raise your hand or stand if you can. We'd like to acknowledge you. And again, our military medley. United States Marine Corps. While we're on the patriotic theme, and again, it's time for us to really take a look around and count our blessings on everything that we've been given. And during hard times and good times, we should always remain and try to remain as a family, as Americans, as a unit. And with that, we'd like to please join in the singing of God Bless America. Our next tune is our last tune. Oh, that's awful kind of you. And this will also be the last time you hear from me. You just made my day. Thank you very much. Would you like to hear a couple more tunes? Did anyone see the blood moon the other night? Anybody? No one's looking up there? Did you say you saw it? Amazing, isn't it? We're at that period of time now. It is in the harvest season. And we'll get one more really good harvest moon. And with that, what's on the opposite side of the moon? The sunshine. And with that is Harvest of Sunshine. Well, the harvest is coming in. Harvest is coming in. What do we mostly harvest?
Apples.
Apples. Not pumpkins, apples. And what do we make with apples? Not applesauce. What do we make with apples?
Nuts.
Did someone say cider out there? Well, that's what we're going to play right now. Sweet cider time. Well, they finally decided which song to do. You're just in love. A lot of love going on out here, I'll tell you. A lot of love. Love bugs. Love bugs. We ready?
Yeah.
All right. beautiful Reds coming out there. It's going to be a gorgeous day tomorrow. Always remember that your Blues are one smile away. And with that, our final song is to say bye-bye Blues. On behalf of the Denville String Band, I'd like to thank you all for coming out this evening. You're a lovely, lovely audience, and you did the YMCA as if you practiced all week. So with that, it's bye-bye Blues, and on behalf of the Denville String Band, bye-bye.